we're proud to partner and be here with you to talk about our presentation today, talking about the intersection of solutions to some of the major events taking place today, including trying to cope with the impacts of COVID-19, while at the same time talking about the necessary response to reimagining police services and increasing equity in our communities. We even heard from an organization this week, the National Resource Defense Council, NRDC, who is talking about how can we be studying programmatic change and resource allocation for climate change. So there's no shortage of priorities, and what we hope to present today is how to build a programmatic data set that equips you in a very positive way to address each and every one of these priority changes. I thought I'd start with a bit of a warm-up, just to get your minds going. So a question, and please feel free to use the chat to come up with a response, but thinking specifically about coronavirus impacts, I want you to think about a trend that is emerging because of COVID, a consequence of the times that we're living in, that could actually present both an opportunity for cost savings for you, as well as an opportunity to positively impact health. The theme of our presentation is intersection, bang for the buck. So can you think of a trend, something taking place, that because of it, there is a cost reduction and that's also simultaneously a very positive impact to health? Rachel, thank you for yours. Increased telehealth use. Very cool. Your brain is not in Friday afternoon mode. You're ready to rock and roll. Greg, forced to work together. Oh, wow. Dependent on each other to provide services for the public. That could have a very positive impact on the use of resources as we look at partnerships, and a combined positive impact on the outcomes that you're achieving. That's very powerful, and totally agree. Well, keep your answers coming in. We did this for one of our organizations, and they came up with a simple one, which was the fact that we're talking about reduced physical mail delivery, because number one, we know that coronavirus has an opportunity to stick on parcels, whether that's people sending in paper money, where it could be up to 4 days, cardboard or heavier stock parcels up to 24 hours, or even just our basic paper, only 3 hours. If we can reduce physical mail, then we have an opportunity to limit exposure, thereby increasing health impacts. And if we could reduce physical mail, possibly there's an opportunity to reduce our costs. And that would beg a very simple question, if we went with that trend, for example, and that is, what programs do we actually provide that require physical mail delivery? When we want to know what programs we actually use to send out the mail, where is this happening in our departments? And if we were going to embark on a study, how much are we spending on these particular programs? And I hope that this will ground us in a discussion of why programs are so important. So we've gone into one of our client data sets, and you can see, just like you have, their basic resource information. And we can drill down actually to see where the non-personnel line item for postage and shipping occurs. Every one of you can do this. But our follow-up, connecting the dots, is coming to understand, where are these line items being spent? What particular departments and what particular programs? So like most all of you, you could probably come up with this analysis. Where is the non-personnel line item for postage and shipping occurring? In this case, it's throughout finance, public works, communications, parks and rec, and their water department. But the very next step is where things get really cool, and that is being able to drill into maybe the top departments who have a postage or shipping resource allocated to their budget, and actually seeing within the water department what programs are using postage and shipping. And it comes to customer billing, utility billing functions, and basic public information outreach. Here we've pinpointed 2 programs that we could go after, where we could actually see cost savings and focus programmatically on how they would change the approach to utility billing and how they might change their approach to public information. If we went into Parks and Rec, we could see specifically what programs do they have driving the cost of postage where they have physical mail going out and it's their marketing and communication efforts, maybe the brochures that they're sending out in Parks and Rec, and also advertising for various special events. Are those two cost drivers by program? And then finally, internally in their own mail center, we can get to that program answer. The power of programs to us is that they are a vehicle for change, and that can't possibly be overstated in the presentation. The rest of the presentation will actually focus on this. In the Alliance for Innovation's new focus on the concept of being anti-fragile, they even pinpoint this idea. If we can get down to what it is that we do and what it costs us to provide what we do, in other words, talking programmatically, then we can really pursue some substantial changes. And so that's what we're going to dive into. Let me give you one other view on the importance of programmatic data. Programmatic data stands apart from what is perhaps our most valuable business intelligence for most organizations, and that is our line item data. Line item data is not bad. In the example that we just ran through, even if we just had data on postage and shipping, we would at least have a head start to say, well, I have a hunch I can get to the right department to ask these questions, but it's missing something. It's missing some greater context. If I looked at a traditional line item budget, and that's what you're looking at right here, and I wanted to tackle revenue shortfalls from COVID-19 and talk about the kind of changes that we might be able to make, I might fall short because the only tools that I have to tackle cost savings are these various line items. Again, they're not bad. I could study these and say, maybe we could tackle reducing the cost for retirement. That's one of the line items I see. Or I could tackle reducing the cost for our healthcare, and that could be one of the line items that I see. But when it comes to things like our supplies or personnel costs that oftentimes we like to leave off the table for these discussions, it's a forest from the trees kind of situation. I can make a recommendation to reduce costs for a line item, but then I lose my perspective on what programs I'm actually impacting. If I make a reduction in personnel, I don't actually know what level of service have I just impacted, and is this going to be a good thing or is it going to be problematic? Well, if I take this exact same data, this line item data, and I reorganized it at a program or service level, this is the same data we were just looking at, but now reorganized with this new piece of information called programs, all of a sudden now I have totally new understanding. Those are the composite costs in the background for services, like what it costs us to provide our custodial or janitorial services. Those are the composite costs of what it costs us to do procurement, or our renewable energy program, or working overall on safety and security. Now I have new perspective on what it is I'm actually providing, and I can drill down, of course. I can look at custodial and say, what is my breakdown of personnel and non-personnel? And if I really wanted to, I could see the composite breakdown of those line items. You know, why does it cost us $7.3 million to do custodial services? It's because of our people who are working on providing that program, as well as the non-personnel costs that are required for various supplies. And at the program level, I can embark upon discussions for programmatic change. For example, in COVID-19, I can say, as Greg was mentioning, and Rachel as well, on the telework, if work from home opportunities are actually beginning to increase, even here and there across City Hall, perhaps we can temporarily save some of our resources from custodial because we'll have less facilities to actually clean. That could be a really nice natural cost savings opportunity by virtue of the fact that we have more work from home going on. We can reallocate those resources. I can get to that conversation talking programmatically. I might also have a component of this program that I want to focus on the increase of service levels. For those of us who are coming back to an office space, I want to make sure that those offices are clean and we minimize the opportunity for the spread of infection. So there's a component of this program that actually might need more resources, and that's going to be really important to know in the COVID environment, but I can tag that program with this future direction. And then finally, and this is where Greg was talking about partnerships, for almost every organization we've ever worked with, when you talk about something like custodial, it's important to realize that not just your local government is providing custodial services. There are nonprofits who require this type of service. There are private sector organizations. There are surely school districts and even other local governments. Where can we embark on a discussion about programmatic partnerships and achieving a regional economy of scale by way of this particular custodial or janitorial program? This is my intro, and as we talk about the intersection of solutions to COVID-19, to reimagining police services, to increasing equity, I will try to bring it central to the point that talking about programs and services and centering on programmatic change is going to be a big step in the right direction, especially as opposed to the line item. So our perspective overall over the last few months has gone something like this. As COVID really started to hit and make its impact, and we resorted to shelter-in-place protocol for the good of public health, with that closing down of the economy, like many of you, we saw significant impacts to our revenue streams. So we have revenue down on the one hand, while hopefully we're doing it for the sake of the improvement of an income of public health. And at the same time, we saw expenses going up as we increase testing, as we increase contact tracing. So we have a natural tension that's starting to occur. It's not only a shortfall, but also pressure on the other side of the equation. Simultaneously, we still have all of our normal services to provide. It's not that because of COVID, we can stop picking up the trash or providing clean and safe drinking water or paving the streets. All of these have to go on. And at the same time, we see the mounting impacts of a call for change among our society. We don't know exactly where that fits on the resource side of the scale, but it's our reality. And so this is the picture that we're facing. And so the goal is, if we have called this red circle, we're trying to center in and focus on COVID, and then it seems like a distraction because over here now my attention is pulled to the blue circle, and this is a discussion of reimagining police. Our argument is that somewhere there's an overlap, and that is a discussion of what it is that we are offering and how we might want to change it. The intersection of solutions to revenue shortfalls from COVID-19, reimagining police, and other massive, wicked problems that are on our minds, like taking action on climate change, homelessness, and so on. The intersection of this Venn diagram is programmatic change. For the next few sections, we're going to dive in specifically to COVID. We're going to dive in specifically to police and talk about how that actually works. And we're going to use a framework around data that you need to produce in order to develop insights, and insights, how they can be used to create action and how you move forward. So we will talk, our thesis goes that we believe there is new data to create, a list of programs that you provide, the cost of those programs, and other important pieces of information about those programs. We need to create good data, and many of you on the call are from our community of implementers, and you already have this data. Others of you are at this stage where the argument is to actually create it. Our thesis has gone, just like we showed there for custodial and janitorial, that line item data is fantastic information, but we can really bring it to life if we slip in this idea of a program inventory and attach the resource data to the program. So we not only know what we do, but the resources involved in providing those programs. You might consider these to be data layers, and our job is to connect them. You see in red here, once we have a program inventory and we have resources associated with those programs, we can talk about other things that we might want to know about the program. Is it mandated? Is there cost recovery? What do we know about the size of population served? Is demand going up? Is demand going down? We'll talk about basic program attributes and things that you might want to know about a particular program. We can talk about the overall impact on outcomes. Is the program really relevant for the results that you're trying to achieve? And then most importantly, we'll talk about what is the program's trajectory? What is the future direction? And our belief system is that the more data that we can connect to the program inventory, the better the insights that you're going to be able to develop. So insights is what we're after. We're going to create programmatic data because with it, we can have better insight or ideas on where we're headed next. When we talked about custodial, and I mentioned efficiency opportunities, or a service level increase opportunity, or a regional insourcing opportunity. Those are what we mean by insights. They're things that we can now talk about at a programmatic level that we weren't able to talk about before because all we had was line item detail. So that's what we're talking about with insights. And with insights, of course, we can move to execution. What are we going to recommend actually for taking action? All right, so this is the framework that we will use as we now move into trying to create this intersection of solutions and talk about some real issues going on. Let's start with coronavirus. And like many of you, this might reflect where you're at, and it's definitely been hard over the last few months. What I'm demonstrating is that the revenue shortfall impacts from COVID-19 have been immense, and many of us have had to resort to quick decisions. What is the most immediate thing that we can do to make our cash flow situation work? And most of these decisions have had to be line item driven, not programmatically driven, because we needed to act fast and buy time for our organization. So we see furloughs, massive amounts of furloughs. We see deferring capital projects. Those are ways to make your cash flow work. And we've seen hiring freezes and vacancy freezes and those sorts of things. And our belief is we've had to do it. I mean, the order of magnitude of the revenue shortfalls that we're facing has required these types of solutions. Our fear, however, or what we're looking out for you all for the future, is that these solutions have, by and large, been exhausted for many organizations. They are one-time in nature. They're not sustainable for the long-term success of your organization or your community. And so it begs the question, how can we move into real choices around programs that we can offer and how we might make ends meet with the resources that we have and working on programs where we're going to head next. Our belief is that we would love for you all to have an idea for every program and service provided in every department you have about its trajectory, about its future. Where is it going? You see on the left-hand side, these are insights that we would love for you to have for every single program you provide. There will be some programs where you need to provide more of it. Even in the midst of the resource tensions that you're facing, a service level increase is actually the most important thing that you need to do. As we think about the public health side of things, we know that's the case. As we think about public information and communication, we know that that is the case. Those programs actually need more resources, further accentuating the challenges that you're facing. You might have some programs moving down the list that are status quo. Hey, when it comes to providing safe drinking water, it's probably not the case that we need to increase the level of service for that program, but we're probably not looking there for an opportunity to decrease the level of service, unless we were talking about the physical mail delivery, which might be appropriate within a water department. And then we move into where are the opportunities? Service level decrease, even if temporarily. Are there opportunities to do something differently where we can bring down the level of service, even if there's a potential chance that we can bring it back up to where we had it sometime in the future? Is there an opportunity to suspend a program, again, even temporarily? As it comes to efficiencies we might create, can we find internal partnerships or consolidation of internal services? Think multiple fleet departments in an organization where that might be able to occur. And then we can expand more to what Greg was describing earlier, beyond internal partnerships to even something on a regional basis or a regional scale. Where can we partner within our community? We're hoping that for every program that you provide, you can tag it, you can come to understand its future direction and have this insight on where you're going. You not only want to be able to tag programs like, here's a list of things that we could do to temporarily suspend the program, but wouldn't it also be cool if we knew what the order of magnitude of the opportunity actually was, so that we can begin to say, okay, here is the size of our revenue shortfall, whatever it might be for you. And then now we can move towards lining up all of the various options or types of solutions that you have for increasing revenue, for repurposing resources and finding programmatic efficiency, for finding ways to reduce services or even partner. How can you accumulate the overall value of the opportunity list, and then move into solving the challenge that you have. This is one of our organizations. We're over on the right-hand side. You can see the way that they have been adding up the size of their revenue shortfall, and through program tagging, coming to understand the potential opportunity for a program, they have been able to characterize their most actionable recommendations, those that they can take within the next 6 months, within the next 6 to 12 months and beyond. And they also framed it in terms of degree of complexity, where each of these bubbles represents an accumulation of programmatic insights, things that they could do differently in order to come up to meet the size of the revenue shortfall overall. It all starts with the program level information. Sticking with COVID and trying to teach you something, what we believe in, and this is the heart of where we come up with the programmatic insights, is that every single program you have has a future direction to it. It's headed somewhere. You might believe that every program you have right now is kind of in status quo until told differently, but we want to be very intentional about what does the program need to do? Where are we headed with it, even within a period of time as short as the next 3 to 5 months, or where are we headed with that program within the next 3 to 5 years? Every single program you have has a future, and we think it's a new piece of information that's very insightful that we would encourage you to learn for every program you provide. We follow the blueprint in order to come up with what are those possible insights. Where the left-hand side of the blueprint, what you're seeing, this is where we need more resources. Pre-COVID, we used to use the blueprint like this. We would work with the community and say, hey, imagine it's 3 to 5 years down the road. What are the programs you're providing that actually need more resources? Where if it was 5 years from now and you're kind of looking back, if this program hasn't grown, you would look back and say, man, we've done something wrong. Like, this program really needs to increase in its capabilities. A poster child for this might be something like cybersecurity and IT, where if it's 3 to 5 years down the road and we're still providing that program with the same level of resources and the same level of service that we are today, then that's probably not the direction that's the best for our city and for our population. These things have price tags by and large. They need resources to fund them. This is what we tag with service level increase. Whereas everything on the right is broken down into where we can mine resources to either free them up and repurpose them or reallocate them to fund the things on the left, or where can we generate new revenue? Where do we have opportunities to actually increase revenues in order to fund the things on the left? This is a balanced equation. As you look at the situation that your organizations are facing right now, what is most likely the case is that one of our bread and butter sources for revenue, local taxation, is probably decreasing based on what we were counting on or what we might have budgeted for. So this is a drain that's going down, and therefore our ability to still meet the needs that we have to increase service levels is only going to come about to the extent that we can increase revenue still and find other ways to reduce costs from a service level perspective, a cost efficiency, or a sourcing perspective. So to break it out, things on the left-hand side are programs that need to grow. And it would be very important if you had a task force on COVID to not ignore those types of programs right now that actually need more resources overall. And the way to fund those programs on the left-hand side and meet those needs is generating new revenue. Where can we be entrepreneurial? Where can we find ways to offer a program that we provide today to a new customer, maybe in a partnership where we're really the best suited entity to provide a program, and for them, their cost might be lower than trying to go it alone, but to pay you, your revenues actually go up. There are plenty of opportunities to tag programs with new revenue potential, and that's going to be one of the ways for you to balance the equation. And then up top, where are your opportunities to free up and reallocate resources, or to just lower the expenses that you have? And the idea is to tag every single program that you have with one of these opportunities. Let me show you a real life example. This is Littleton, Colorado, in the Denver metropolitan area. And for every program that they provide, they're starting to embark on picking 3 from every department that might lend itself well to a discussion of its future. So here's the program median and streetscape maintenance, which is a service level increase for them. This is pre-COVID, by the way. And over here is payroll processing, where they had a program efficiency recommendation. If we drop in the blueprint, what we're talking about here on the left-hand side is we need more resources to fund our median and streetscape maintenance. And from the right-hand side, we are going to find those resources because of program efficiencies that we're creating in our payroll processing approach. It's a trade-off, and those programmatic changes, given the fact that every program is now tagged with a future direction, will inform us on where we can increase spending, where we need to, by decreasing spending in certain areas and bringing in new revenues in other areas. Where this wraps up, I did have here's a quick description. Here's how it looks for Littleton overall in payroll processing. You can see how they are achieving those cost changes from one period of time to the other, and reducing ever so slightly, but still making progress on creating a programmatic efficiency, saving resources. Here is programmatic change in action. We've had a couple communities who, during the period of time in COVID, have been focused on continuity of operations planning, and that is where are resources needed. So for any of us who have been focused on adding resources to COVID task forces, so on and so forth, those are programs that did not exist last year. So that's a great example of left-hand side of the blueprint. Last year it was $0, and now this year it's whatever the level of effort is that you're actually putting in. And then the follow-up question is, what programs are not getting funded? Are we okay in this particular example that records management, for which we used to be allocating at least some level of funding, is not getting done because certain staff members might be deemed less of a imperative, or they're working from home, or they're simply reassigned. Programmatic changes of this nature can take place on an annual basis, but you can also use this mindset, this methodology, to talk about programmatic changes that are taking place on a quarterly basis or on a weekly basis, and that's how fast things are actually changing. The punchline for COVID is whatever the size of the revenue shortfall is that you're facing, we would encourage you to adopt the mindset that every program has a future, and for every program that you provide, have a cost for those programs and be able to tag it with what is that particular opportunity that you're pursuing. Moving on to another topic, we're going to talk about using programmatic data to reimagine police services. So with everything that's taking place across the country, and certainly has been over the last few months, this is far bigger than simply a programmatic discussion, but the use of programs can be extremely helpful in talking about what the actual solutions are going to be. We have conversations around defunding the police, and the focus is what programs are actually currently being provided, from what programs should resources be subtracted if we're going to defund the budgets for police departments, and then toward what other programs and outcomes are resources going to be reallocated. These are the fundamental questions. So on the service level, we're talking about a much bigger issue, which is what is the design of a police department? What is its intent? And what we want to be able to add is, here's what's actually happening, and now can we add some practicality and some strategy to that discussion overall. So City of Salem, Oregon is one of the organizations who has already created a program inventory and program costs, and they can talk about from patrol to dispatch to the drug enforcement unit to the canine unit, downtown versus residential patrol. Moving on down the line, you see crime lab, you see graffiti removal. They've done this awesome job of allocating resources, personnel and non-personnel, to the programs that they provide. So while council and citizens are engaging in what do they want for the future of their police department, their city manager can bring this data to say, no problem, if we're going to talk about changing the way we respond to incidents with officers or our approach to patrol, here's where we're starting with. And these are the resources that go to that function. What's been really interesting is as some of these discussions have focused on patrol response and whether or not uniformed officers are the right resource to send to a particular situation, a lot of focus has shifted towards dispatch, and the question becomes, how is that function working? Are they able to appropriately assess the situation as somebody calls in with an emergency, to know whether it's appropriate to send uniformed officers or whether it's more appropriate to send a different type of strategic resource, something for somebody who's in need of mental health services, for example. And that's a great conversation to have, but again, it pivots from a resource reallocation and the programs you provide. We were working with GFOA recently on trying to get a quick understanding among a survey set of data. We chose 80 cities and tried to come up with, on average, the percent of resources from a police department budget that go to various functions. And you see patrol and dispatch, just like we were looking at from Salem. Not surprising that they would be among the top. I guess the question in Salem is, does dispatch even need more resources? And if we are reallocating away perhaps from patrol, where are those resources going to go to achieve the outcome that we actually want to pursue? Back to Alliance for Innovation, they, in their anti-fragile framework, talk about running local governments on real data, and this is what we're hoping to add to that conversation or bring to that definition, is having a program inventory and at least having a first approximation of where the resources are going gives you a leg up to say, you know, defunding police probably doesn't refer to defunding DARE or defunding hazardous materials or probably defunding animal control. So with this information, we can have even more insight to bring to that discussion, and we hope that you would too. And we put this data into your slides so that you could take a look at that as well and begin to ascertain, what does your police department look like? And for those of you who are on the call, who have already gone through this work, who have a program inventory and have developed program costs, this is the kind of data that we hope that you would bring to bear as well. So let's at least start here as we're talking about resource reallocation. The third section I want to talk about in our intersection of solutions is pursuing equity. And what a profoundly important and exciting and tragic conversation that this is, but it's what we're in this business for, right? In public service, is we recognize that this is a problem worth solving. And now we want to talk about how can we bring programmatic data to this discussion. Referencing once again the Alliance for Innovation, they talk about anti-fragile local governments focus on outcomes. And we think in your pursuit of solutions for equity in your community, it's also going to be extremely important to start with that outcome in mind. What are you really hoping to achieve for your community? And then using programmatic data to say, how can we change the programs we provide today to make them more in line with that outcome that we're actually seeking? We have two clients, and we actually presented on this with both ICMA and ELGL recently, but we have two clients who have actually gone as far as defining what their objective is for equity. City and County of Denver defines it as a systemic endeavor resulting in equitable opportunities and outcomes where race and ethnicity can no longer be used to predict the life outcomes, and outcomes for all groups are improved. This is fantastic for the City and County of Denver, and they can look at any program they provide and say, how can we change it to make it more in line with this overall objective? That's extremely important for you to have this defined as well. And the reason is because not everybody's going to define it the exact same way. There's another client, the City of Tacoma, Washington, who is describing specifically racial equity, and these are three components of their definition, but again, they're crystal clear. Engagement of communities of color rooted in anti-racist strategies and principles. In the middle right, anti-racist investment in creating and building economic opportunity and access for communities of color. And finally, bottom left, anti-racist strategies and investment in building and growing household stability, access, safety, and or health of communities of color. Denver's is not the exact same as Tacoma. They surely have overlap, no question about it. But the point back to you is make sure that your definition of equity is clear and precise for your community and for your organization. And the reason that's important is because with a clear understanding of the outcome you're trying to achieve, we can now talk about programs and programmatic changes that we could make. In our work with the City and County of Denver, I'll start just with this top left example. We've engaged in conversations at the programmatic level around things they could do differently to put programs more in alignment with achieving social equity objectives. And what has surprised me in a very positive way, I would have thought that if we're talking about equity, we're going to talk specifically about obvious programs that change. I don't know. I had a different mindset of what solutions I was looking for. In Denver, they talked about a program like snow removal and how they can actually increase service levels in certain neighborhoods that they really want to bring up from an equity perspective, and get into paving the sidewalks where people need sidewalk access in order to get to the bus stop. They need to get to the bus stop because they need to catch the public transportation in order to get to their jobs. So it's economic opportunity, or have sidewalk access to get to their local grocery store. And I hadn't thought about it that way. But the breakthrough for me was at a program level. If we talk about how to change snow removal, we open up a whole universe, a realm of different ways, simple ways perhaps, that we can achieve equity by making programmatic changes. How cool. They'll follow the blueprint because some of these programs might need a service level increase, whereas other programs like snow removal need a service level increase in this case. They're going to add an additional level of service, but it's the right thing to do because it's in line with their equity objective. Bottom left, however, impound lot, this is a revenue-related recommendation where they're actually talking about fee forgiveness, fee and fine forgiveness, because they perceive their own rates as a barrier for people to get back access to their vehicles so they can experience the local economy. They can get to their jobs once again. And they had found time after time certain cases where people were unable to pay the fine or the fee, and the impact on their access to the local economy had a dramatically negative consequence. So this is something they want to change, and that will open up opportunity for social equity. And that's bottom right-hand side of the blueprint, if you remember, because that's a revenue-related recommendation where the revenues are actually going down. Also very important to discover, include in your blueprint balanced equation, and move forward to solve. But using programmatic data has once again helped us in this situation. So programs are a vehicle for change. Having a program inventory, having resources aligned with programs, and having discussions at a program level about what is the future for every program is the way to do it. Steve from our team just put this slide together for the City and County of Denver this morning, and I reallocated the resources, so thank you, Steve. Programmatic conversations are the gateway forward to help in whether it's dealing with COVID, dealing with police, dealing with global climate change, and having that base layer and being able to add various data layers and connect them to the program level is exactly what we're hoping that you can do. Remember in the beginning of my presentation, I talked about data leads to insights, insights lead to action. In all of my examples so far, I focused more on the insights that you can develop and the action that you can execute to make a big forward leap on all of these issues. And I did that intentionally because it's a begin with the end in mind sort of approach. For the ending of my presentation, I want to take one step back and go to how do we actually create that data in the first place. When we talk about a program inventory, this is simply a list of every program and service that is provided in your organization within your department. We create program inventories. That's what you're seeing here in this crash course for our organization. And it literally is getting down into the department and finding out, what does everybody do? Where do they spend their time? It's not uncommon for an organization to have a couple hundred programs overall. So as you embark on developing a program inventory, we certainly have plenty of examples to try and share with you if you're going down this path, and we'd love to talk to you further. But it is a listing of where everybody spends their time. There are rules of thumb and ways to do it that have been very effective for some organizations, where you don't want to get too small, like Responding to email is not necessarily a program, and then programs can be too big, like running an airport might be a program that's actually very large. There is a sweet spot, and with this programmatic information, we can start to develop a better understanding of what it is that we do. We move from programs to allocating resources, and we have a very practical approach to doing this. If you think about it, we're going to break out our non-personnel resources from our personnel because there are easier allocation methods to use, and you can actually allocate your revenue as well if you're interested in cost recovery. But the point is moving from your department budget to dive deeper into an understanding of what happens within each and every department. So here is a basic solid waste department where it's interesting to know that you spend $7.2 million on solid waste, but more interesting to know what are we allocating towards curbside recycling versus curbside organic collection versus our basic trash collection, and even public education. Public education might be one of those programs where you think, it's very small compared to everything else. And that might be true, but to even see over $100,000 going towards it opens our eyes to say we should know how we're allocating our resources. How we get there, allocating personnel based on what percentage of their time is dedicated to support any given program in the inventory, and then non-personnel costs as well, and even program revenue to complete an overall cost of service analysis. Finally, we can talk about evaluating programs based on other characteristics that might be very interesting for you to know. We establish basic criteria in our work in programmatic-based business intelligence, tagging programs with degree of mandate. How mandated is this program? Degree of reliance. Are there other partners who we could seek to collaborate with? Size of population served, change in demand. And when it comes to outcomes, this is yet another area where you can measure or evaluate programs on their influence on economic development, safe and secure environment, equity, and so on and so forth. And with this type of data, we can come to understand and appreciate the overall alignment and influence that every program has as you're starting to embark on programmatic decisions. And then finally, all of this comes to an end with the blueprint. With the more data that we've connected, the more connected data layers, the better the insights. You remember our exponential curve graph, and this is where we include this as a tool for you that every program you provide should be able to be tagged with one or more of these opportunity areas. It's 3 minutes before the end of the presentation. I'm going to bring it to a close and say we hope that you will pursue genuinely not only surviving the revenue shortfalls of COVID-19, but also being open to where resources need to go to increase from a public health perspective, from an equity perspective, from a climate change, or whatever those priorities are for your community overall. We'd love to help you in that endeavor, and I'll stick around. I know we have several staff members on the line. If you do have other conversations or questions, I will open the chat box for the first time to take a look. But thank you, everybody, especially on a Friday afternoon, for joining us.